Your biography is full of interesting themes like wild days in America before the Vietnam War or your journalist days in Madrid, but today I want to concentrate on the main topic of your work, the life of the gypsies. How did your fascination with gypsy people begin?
Well, in the early 90s I was in the Czech archives looking for my Czech ancestors. And in the Chivon archive in South Bohemia, I came across 60,000 documents on a gypsy death camp that the Czechs ran during World War II. There was a 50-year restraining order on those records, but finally by 1994 I got to see them, and I discovered that the camp was run by the Czechs, not the Germans. All the guards were Czech. Administrators were Czech. It was run out of Department 5, the Czech Ministry of the Interior. There were no Germans in that ministry. And I found more than 1,500 names in the records, 93 guards, 6 administrators, more than 1,000 gypsies. I finally got the Czech police to run that list of names through their computer to see if anybody was still alive. A couple of weeks later they came back and said no, everybody was dead, everybody had died of typhus during World War II. Well, that was an excuse the Germans always used to explain the deaths in their concentration camps. So I met a gypsy guy who had been a taxi cab driver in New York for 8 years, and I hired him to go with me for 6 months through all the ghettos in the Czech Republic looking for survivors of World War II, gypsy survivors, and we found more than 100 survivors of this Czech death camp called Lety. I collected their oral histories, and most of them had been sent from Lety to Auschwitz, and they said Lety was worse than Auschwitz. The Czech guards were worse than the German guards. So their oral histories started me on the road to becoming a Romani activist. I published 4 books based on their oral histories, a novel, 2 books of poetry, and a collection of their oral histories. And that's how I got started living with gypsies, and later the United Nations needed an expert on gypsies to go to Kosovo and live in a gypsy refugee camp and help the United Nations with that problem, and they asked me to volunteer for 3 months, and 15 years later I'm still there in the Balkans living and working with gypsies.
There's a big difference between the life of Spanish gypsies, Gitanos, which you know very well, and life of other gypsies in Europe. Why is that Gitanos have quite a strong position in Spanish society?
Well, I think they are appreciated more in Spain than in most other countries because they have so many heroes among their own people. They have bullfighters who are heroes. They have flamenco singers and dancers who are national heroes. They even have football players who are well respected. So, you know, you've got to have heroes among your people before you are recognized and respected. Yul Brynner, the great Hollywood actor in The King and I and The Magnificent Seven, he was president of the International Romani Union. Charlie Chaplin had gypsy ancestors, and so the gypsies of England, where Charlie Chaplin came from, the gypsies in the United States, where Yul Brynner was a hero, and the gypsies in Spain, who have had heroes for centuries, are much more respected than the gypsies of Eastern Europe, who until now haven't had really too many heroes.
It seems that the European societies are becoming more and more reluctant to improve the situation of gypsy people and to acknowledge their rights. The recent examples of hatred are very popular far-right political parties in Europe, especially in France and Hungary. why this hatred seems to be growing in the globalized Europe?
Well, if you go back to before World War II, you will find in most European countries the gypsies were highly respected in the agricultural enterprises. The farmers needed gypsies. They needed them to hoe their crops, sow the seeds, harvest the crops, repair farm machinery, make horseshoes. The gypsies were a major part of the agricultural community of most European countries, you know, especially in Italy and other countries. But after World War II, farming became more mechanized, and so the labor, the hand labor, wasn't needed so much, and so the gypsies, you know, were not needed, and they moved into the cities where factories were being built, but the people who got those jobs were people with white skins. And so after World War II, the gypsies really became unemployed. And when you become unemployed, you become poor, and when you become poor, you can't pay the rent, and you end up living in the park. And basically it's a question of economics. When the gypsies were needed to repair, you know, copper pots and pans, and needed to make horseshoes, and needed to sharpen scissors, and needed to grow and pick the crops, they were very well respected. But after that, when they become, you know, not so much needed, and they fell to the bottom of the economic ladder, they became despised, as people then thought they were parasites.
What is the future of gypsies? Can you predict how will their European life change over the next few decades, and is there any hope for these abandoned people?
I started working with gypsies back in the 1990s, the early 1990s. And believe me, I didn't think it could get any worse for them. Skinhead attacks, the police bringing skinheads in their patrol cars to attack gypsy homes at night, skinheads wandering the streets looking for gypsies. I didn't think it could get any worse. But over the past 2 decades that I've been working and living with gypsies, it has gotten worse. I don't see any hope in the near future. I don't think in my lifetime we're going to see a change for the better. The political parties in Europe are moving to the right. Gypsies are being made the scapegoats for the economic problems, and I really don't see much hope in the future.
Thanks a lot, Paul.
Okay.
And yeah, that's the end of the second part.
Okay. Thank you.
That's right.
Well, now I can say hello.
Ebr, forever proud.